Welcome to the Idle Chat on the Late Break Show. This is where we sit down in the brown chairs of questionable quality and we interview somebody at length. This time we have a chap, a larger-than-life character.
At length.
Actual, yes, at length. None other than the man that drives around in a huge orange and wears orange gloves frequently.
True.
It is television mechanic Edd China.
Thank you very much.
So obviously we've got to use these microphones because we have an audience. I suppose the first thing I wanted to say to you was, how on earth did you get into this? Because you've been in the game, building strange things, sort of semi-inventing and television for a long while. So how did it all kick off?
Oh, it's such a long story. And I can't even remember, I'm that old. Actually, well, it started a long time ago. As you say, I was playing around with just making weirdness on wheels, really. I guess, we used to go to the hot rod shows and sort of custom car stuff, and that was what I was more into, just because I like to see how people did stuff strangely, if you like, and that's what I found was the most inspiring bit. And I guess, so I think the very first thing I made of any note was we did Run to the Sun, good old cruise down to Newquay, and a long time ago. And I'd had this Beetle, and we had got some mates around. Let's just do something for Run to the Sun, it'd be great. And then so we cut the roof off, and then welded the doors up, covered it in fur, dressed as cavemen, and drove down doing that.
I remember that. Gosh, yeah.
Well, that was a mad thing, and it was basically, it'd been spawned by the idea that I think we'd seen the back of our head or somebody's trainer or something in a shot from a magazine shot from the year before. So let's just do this properly. And then, Top Gear magazine were there, and obviously got the custom car and all this kind of stuff. And then I had to raise some money for Rally International, went out to Belize, and so I thought, let's do something like that, but better. So that's how I built the sofa. And I guess the rest was...
So hang on. That's why I built the sofa.
Well, I just had this idea that wouldn't it be cool to make a vehicle that was nothing like a car? So a bit like the Lamborghini Countach back in the 70s. You imagine when that came out, there was nothing like it. It was epic. So I said, well, I could have done that, but I thought, no, I'll go something even more crazy. What's the least like a car thing that you could have that could still go? And at the time, we were very lucky in this country that we can use... the construction use regulations and stuff. We have these rules. If you comply with the rules, or at least can convince the authorities that you do comply with those rules, then you get to build a car. In a lot of other countries around the world, that isn't an option. You can't mess with engines in sort of France, I think it is, or whatever it is, but you can do mad bodywork. It's the opposite in Italy. So we're very lucky here. And so I just thought I'd take that to the max. Along with the idea that you could be outside a restaurant and then order food from your living room. How clever would that be? So that's really how it started. Everybody said it was a stupid idea. I built a driving sofa, and then it went mental.
I remember the whole Run to the Sun thing. You've reminded me of it. That the whole idea was for people to sort of outdo one another. A bit like, is it Ladies' Day at the races, where it's all about the hats, but with cars that don't cost very much money. It's maximum creativity. Mm-hmm. You still kind of have to be road legal, and you have to get to Cornwall. Which is difficult for a lot of the people that enter it. And actually the journey's almost more interesting than the destination. But what did you qualify in? Like, what did you do at school? What were you like as a kid?
I did a lot of procrastination. That was definitely one of my things. I guess I always liked making things. I was a Lego kid, so there was that. So there was that something about that creativity and about sort of getting, just turning something that's in your head into reality. And then I guess at school I did sort of engineering and woodwork, and then obviously craft design technology, CDT started. And then we were very lucky of an era where the school I went to, we still had, it was many schools around, it was used as an RAF sort of base for a while. So they had all these old lathes and milling machines and stuff, so we got to use those. And it was before...
Proper dangerous
machines.
Machines.
Proper. We had a forge. We actually had an old forge. We cast aluminium. That was one of our things. We had to make a little shield of the school. And so cast aluminium was one of the things we did. And we had to make the old poker you did and all that. So we did some really, really cool stuff. And then a couple of years after us, that's when they invented the glue gun, and that's all kids ever learnt after that. So it was kind of...
The biggest blister I've ever had at school was from a glue gun.
I once covered a Skoda, we called it Bloomin' Skoda, in artificial flowers, the whole thing, and the amount of blisters from that was shocking. It looked like something else was going on, but it was... Yeah, it was
as a serious point, do you think it's a worry now that kids probably wouldn't just have access to lathes and forges and things for whatever reason, and that set you in good stead for what you do now?
Totally. I think we had a guy, Mr. Bullock, and he was this fantastic Caribbean gentleman who'd been in a sort of a tool maker on the ships, Merchant Navy, for years and years and years. And he could make anything out of anything. That was his job, I guess, back in the day. And with people like him, sort of you could ask any question. It doesn't matter how stupid the question was. He'd always have an answer. Normally, it was look at the drawing boy. That was his thing, because obviously the answer's there. But it was just, I guess, it inspired. Well, it just gave me the idea that you could actually make anything. And back in the day, I didn't even realise you could go and buy bolts and stuff from shops and stuff. It was just what was in the drawer at the end of the room. That's what we could make stuff from. And so you got quite good at adapting what was around. And the scary thing is now, I think engineering is expensive. Especially nowadays, if you want to teach computer science, you can either have lots of old school sort of laptops. Even a new computer isn't that expensive anymore. Whereas even a crap milling machine or lathe is expensive. Then you have to have somebody who knows how to use that and all the tooling and all the other stuff for all the health and safety. And so it's a really difficult thing, I think, to actually teach in school and to keep up to date.
Do you remember that? I think the first time I met you was when I came to feature your 4-poster bed car on Max Power.
Oh wow, yes.
And we decided to mock up a lay-by dogging incident.
And didn't
this
you
is,
get?
This
and
is
we
an
got
actual
some.
fact. We did do this.
And didn't you get some? You got sponsored by some pajama company or something. We had to wear these Ponzi pajamas.
Had to wear pajamas.
And then tried to break into Spearmint Rhino or something.
Yes.
There was a lot. It was
that might have happened.
The heady days of Max Power. Yeah, okay.
Creativity was
totally PC. But it was. Well, I think. Well, really. I mean, so when I did the sofa, we built some other vehicles. So Comfy Banana was a company we created. It was again with no direction at all, hence the stupid name. Building weird stuff, and I was just driving around town, sort of showing off. I guess the first time the car worked, and somebody stopped me outside. We were in Bar Italia, or outside Bar Italia, and then this guy just comes up. Oh, do you want to promote a show? It's like, all right, what does it pay? And he basically phoned me on the Monday, and I was about to go and try and get a job at McLaren, weirdly, because Gordon Murray's son went to our school, and I just happened to get his number, and he was really good to me on the phone and just said, look, design a suspension, come and tell me about it, and we'll see if we can get a job. So I was supposed to go to McLaren, and I could never have worked within that discipline, but I think this guy had phoned up and said, oh, just drive around London advertising some furniture show. And it's like, well, if you're going to pay me just to do what I was doing anyway, yes, I'll do that. So we did that, and then basically at the end of the week they go, what are you going to do next? I was like, I don't know, a bed or a bathroom, being very flippant. The next day, how much is that going to cost? So, okay, so that's how that business started.
Wow.
It was a shocking business because it was just a hobby that I got paid badly for. Everything we ever made was reinventing the wheel. Always over budget. It was really good fun and just shocking business. But because of that, then the BBC came knocking one day, and they were doing this show called Panic Mechanic. And at the time, they were looking for somebody who could mess with cars. And I'd just been in Custom Car Magazine. We just won a race at Donington with the Sun, doing the wacky races and all this. So basically, everywhere they looked, my name came up. So then it's like, well, we should have Ed. And of course, if I'd known that, I would have haggled, obviously. So we did the job, and it was really good fun, getting paid just again to mess around with cars. We just, you turn a hearse into a dune buggy or a Reliant Robin into a drag race or all this sort of stuff. And we did one series of that, and it did really, really well for a BBC show. It was like over 3 million views. And at the time, that's when you would have automatically got a new commission. Then the Learning Channel in America wanted it, so they were going to pay more money. And then basically, it was also the same time when this woman who was running the BBC at the time hated cars, and so she turned off Top Gear and our show because that was the last two left. While a guy was on holiday, and then this guy came back. You can't do that. You can't just turn off this one part of the demographic. But that's obviously when the cooking and the gardening thing happened, and so then that's when the revamp of Top Gear happened, which I did. One of the first episodes, we did a James Bond car on a budget. Which was great fun. That's after having done the Panic Mechanic, and so that's really kind of how it started. And then we were busy at the time building all these stupid vehicles. We did a giant shopping trolley for the Jackass premiere.
I remember that.
Yeah, well, I still got it in the
really
workshop.
Dangerous.
Yeah,
you still got it.
Well, it's going to be on the show at some point, but it's so far at the back of the queue of things to do. It's mad. And then we did we were doing a driving office for someone else. We did these dancing grass vans and stuff. We had a screen that worked. It was back in the day, really before SIM cards were really a thing. So we had a thing called a premise cell, which basically turned a sort of like a SIM card into so you can actually have a normal phone. So we had a fax machine and everything else on there. And then it had a water cooler that worked, hot and cold water. And it was mad. And we had to go down to, it was built we went down to Cannes for some office show. And it was really tight security, and we just aimed the kind of security guard. It's like, obviously we're coming in, so he lets in, and we parked up in the middle trying to give out all these cards for this business, and then the organisers came, oh, you can't do this, it's it's sort of, he said, unsportsmanlike advertising. It's like, okay, and then he says, like, pack it up immediately, so he just like turn it on and drove, and he's like, that's amazing. It's like, well, there we go. Anyway, so we did all this kind of crazy stuff, and in the middle of all that, these guys came up and said, oh, we want to do this show. Would you be interested? I'm kind of busy. And he said, well, come and do an interview to this farm in the middle of nowhere. Bring your favourite tool. And I nearly didn't go because we were busy doing the office and the trolley all at the same time. We built the office or the shopping trolley basket in 24 hours because we were so up against it.
Wow.
And I hadn't slept for days as usual. Anyway, so I had to go and pick up the top of the office in this place. It happened to be literally 10 minutes from this farm. And it was on the same day. I thought, okay, that's kind of weird. I'm just going to maybe go just to see what happens. And I turned up and they put me in front of a Land Rover and said, change a wheel and talk about it. Okay. And then do the windscreen wipers. Okay. And then they said, right, now tell us about your favourite tool, which I had one of the solar powered welding masks, which had just come out at the time, and it was just revolutionary, changed my world because I had more hands available to do, holding hot things. And it was, and that's really, they sort of said, oh yeah, well, that's great, thanks very much. And then so I forgot about it, and a couple of weeks later they said, oh, we've got this other presenter, can we just try you together? And then so he pretended that Mike had bought my Range Rover, so I knew everything that was wrong with it, so I just gave him a really hard time on camera, and we had instant chemistry. And obviously that's what they saw, and this tiny show on a tiny channel just sort of started, and every year it's, oh, I don't know if we're going to do it next year, not sure. And so Discovery would wait until past Christmas, and, oh, can we do another series? Okay. And then that happened for many
Was it,
years.
how many series did you do?
13. So yeah.
Is it 13?
So and that was kind of 135 cars.
Gosh.
And quite a few hours in the workshop.
So that was what you did that audition because it was near the company that supplied the desktop.
To be honest, yeah, it was literally. I was curious when I did Panic Mechanic. I was just really curious about how TV works. So and that's my curiosity gets me in trouble all the time, which is kind of how I build weirdness.
Yeah.
And that was the thing, and I thought it was one of those things because at that point, building the cars was really good fun, even if it still wasn't a business. So it was just thought, well, actually, it could be kind of fun. And then when we started doing the filming, we started filming normally in the spring, sort of beginning of the spring, where the weather was horrible and stuff, and the cars looked bad. And then by the summer, everything looks lovely and shiny. So there was this natural progression in the show, and it's one of the many elements that kind of made it more successful, I guess, because we're kind of like polishing in sunshine into the cars. But it was also the worst possible time for Comfy, because that was when all these PR people went, oh, we haven't got any activity this year. Quickly, we need a driving giraffe. And I was like, okay, yeah, we could do that. And so
what's been the weirdest suggestion to build a motorised version of?
Somebody wanted me to do. It had to be a driving taxi that was an aquarium with a guy who had to be hidden but breathing underwater and driving around London. And it's like, but there's a lot. Water's heavy, right? And I've forgotten. I think it was by the time we built the glass thing, it was going to be 5 tons heavier than a normal taxi.
Whoa!
And it's like, all right, we can do this. That's fine. And then I was like, but they want fishing, live fish. It's like, okay, so I had to phone up a number of different organisations. So, do fish have rights? So, actually, the other one is even crazier slightly. Was Nobby's Nuts? Remember those?
I do remember Nobby's Nuts.
We had to they wanted something to go into the middle of the Welsh, the stadium in Wales. I don't know what it's called.
The Millennium Stadium.
Possibly, that might be it. And it was brand new, really lovely new lawn. Mustn't mess with it, but we need to drive something in, and we need to fire peanuts at the audience. I was like, okay.
I wonder what you're going to say.
And the thing is, it was all about phallic symbols, wasn't it? So we made this massive air cannon with these big sort of orbs of air and whatever else, and to make it a tank based on a Range Rover and stuff. And we ordered these massive tyres and stuff. And again, because we come up with the idea outside of the PR agency, there was a little bit of a moment, and then it didn't happen, which is probably a good thing for the world, frankly.
Tell me though, because obviously a lot of that is driven by creativity.
Yeah.
Have you got a kind of ever spooling brain?
I think
keeps whirling.
Yeah, absolutely. Many of us have. I think that's the. It's a way a lot of stuff doesn't get done. Obviously, there's always a better idea somewhere. But I think that's really what makes me work. Is I see stuff. I suppose one of the things I used to say a lot was I like connecting things that shouldn't be connected, and that's hence how you end up with the driving sofa, because it's more about the challenge of can you make that possible. And it's kind of like the kind of thing that he's got a few more quid, but Elon Musk. Doing, you saw Bezos, whatever it is, with his rockets that land where they started. And it's like, well, that's awesome, and he's just forced it to happen, but with a little bit of extra flair and some, So I think if we had an infinite supply of cash, the stuff we could make. I mean, I wanted to do as a kid. I wanted to become a genetic engineer, and I think probably that's a good thing that didn't happen.
Is that what you thought you were going to do?
I think, after doing about sort of 3 or 4 years of studying fungus and trees, I thought, well, maybe there's something else we could do. And I did CDT. And in fact, got my first car. I bought my first car not having any idea how cars worked. and it obviously failed its MOT almost immediately. I spent the last few pounds on some AA cover and a stereo from Halford.
A stereo, always
and
the
then
important.
we used to drive through Godalming High Street, and there was a Lloyd's Bank and had black sort of marble thing, and I am looking pretty cool in my yellow Beetle, and that was how it all started. It failed at its MOT, and I had to learn the hard way instantly. And my dad and mum used to work on Minis back in the day, so I had an Imperial socket set for my metric car, which is a great way to learn how to use the wrong tool wrongly, as it were. So I after lots of knuckle damage, I kind of started buying a 13mm spanner, then a 10mm spanner, and it went from there. And it was literally out of necessity. And then that wasn't enough, so then I obviously started messing with it, and then sort of put like solenoid doors on it, and then cut the back off, and then I ended up crashing it, turning it into a beach buggy, and then just off you go, So yeah.
So you come from a family of people that like to tinker, or was it just for necessity?
Well, it's sort of, my mum's a nurse, or she was a nurse, so she tinkered a bit, mostly with aspirin, I think. But the main thing was my dad was an actual rocket scientist, so he actually developed the solar arrays and stuff for the first British solar-powered satellites, which was pretty awesome. He died when I was very young, so it's kind of, I've obviously got some of that inventiveness sort of in me. I mean, I never attained those kind of heights. I sort of maybe misappropriated that, that knowledge or that ability. But it's it's interesting how you get sort of wafted along, but it's just really just solving pointless problems is what I do best.
I get the impression it's sort of like, you're sort of fighting with lots of like mental fireworks going on of like,
I guess,
how far do we push stuff? What can we get away with?
Well, that's the challenge. I think that's things like the sofa and stuff. It was all about butting up against the rules. I'm not very good with authority, and I think that was kind of it was a good way of exercising that to a point, I suppose. And then the TV thing was totally by accident. And I mean, I think there are so many people in TV nowadays who really are desperate for the attention. I really don't like attention, which is difficult being 2 meters tall. But it's kind of
and driving an orange.
Well, I get to hide inside. But that, I realised when I wrote the book, actually, it was a weird thing, because everyone goes, "Oh, you want to write a book?" I don't know. Is it going to hurt? And actually, it was incredibly therapeutic. And there's an awful lot of anecdotes. I'm never ever going to regale anybody again, because you realise when you write them down that they're awful. And it's like, so never going to go there again. But actually, the process, I wrote it with Imogen, and it was kind of it was like a really intense 3 months. But you go through this kind of cathartic kind of process. Yeah. But when we're doing that, one of the things I realised is, like with the sofa, it was actually kind of like a shield. It was like a force field of attention. So people were looking at that, not at me. I was just the operator. And especially when you have guests and stuff, you couldn't tell. That was the whole point. You couldn't tell who was driving it. And that's kind of, I realised after a while that was what I was about. And with the TV thing, I suppose I just wanted to fix stuff and explain maybe how that worked. And that was really, when I first started the first series of Wheeler Dealers, they just said, just say what you're doing. But then I felt kind of an obligation to try and explain what it made, how it made sense, or how this actually worked. And I guess that's, I never wanted to be a teacher either, but there's a scary amount of people out in the world who now think they know how to do something because I said so.
Do you believe that there's still a really strong future in things like mentoring and apprenticeships? And
I think it's a really important part of what we have to do for the next generation. Having trashed the planet, it'd be nice to give them some tools to actually fix it again in our absence. And I think part of, you do need to learn how to do stuff. You can only do so much stuff on a spreadsheet, but you still also have to get hands-on. You have to get practical. Yeah. And I think the more we sort of rely or leave it up to the six blokes left who do that, it's going to be a disaster. So I think we absolutely have to show the youth of today kind of how to do stuff. They might not be interested, but they might learn a little something which would be a nugget that they'll keep for later.
I suppose you're best known for Wheeler Dealers because you did
it for a while.
How many years was it?
13.
13 years, 13 series. When was the last time you spoke to Mike Brewer?
I guess, well, it was actually, he phoned me when he was getting death threats, which was pretty uncool. It's like, it's a car show on TV, really? And so, we did a video about that because it just seemed pretty uncool. But he's been crazy busy in California, and I've been doing our thing. I've had quite an eclectic sort of 5 or 6 years since we left the show. So it's, and it's been interesting having, it was really funny because at the time Discovery were doing this whole thing about make your world bigger. And obviously I was stuck in this studio all the time, and it was kind of relentless because they wanted so many episodes a year. And so there was this ever-growing list of things I wanted to do, and then we had the opportunity to leave. Ultimately, they were trying to sell the show or give the show to Motor Trend, so they needed to change contracts. And so with TV, basically, when you sign a contract at the beginning, I'm sure you had the same thing. You can't leave unless they want you to, whatever, or left you opportunity. So it was one of those things like, it's kind of now or never, perhaps. So let's give it a go. And then it was amazing that we got to do, playing around with sort of high-speed amphibians, and they did an electric conversion on a high-speed amphibian. Looked after my mum for about 6 months while she was ill and stuff before she died, and I got to be there at the end. So there was some amazing. Got to write a book. So it's just like all this stuff was, again, like you're saying about being uncorked. It was kind of like doing the show for that long and that intensively, because I never got to have a holiday, because obviously everybody else could be swapped out, but I was always the guy there. So it was just nice to just have a complete change of scenery. So it's it's been an interesting time, and again, that's really what Workshop Diaries is about. It's because I guess the public demand it.
So did it get to a point with the TV where you kind of felt like you were kind of in TV jail, where you couldn't escape because the hours?
Yeah, well, the hours insane. I mean, we were used to working. I guess that was a work ethic that was drummed into me as a kid. But you kind of, it does after a while. I mean, living out in California was great fun, but it's not real. It's kind of that's the weird thing. It's like cycling on your beach cruiser to a beach bar for breakfast is all very groovy. But then obviously working from then until 9 or 10 at night every day, whatever, and then driving somewhere over the weekend. Of course, everywhere's further away in America. So if you're going to do a test drive, we used to drive rather than fly if we could help it, just because the countryside is amazing.
Yeah.
So you want to go and see that, but of course it takes time. So it just got quite intense, I think, and it just thought in most jobs, people say you should leave after about 7 years or something. So 13 was pretty good innings, and it's kind of and also perhaps the direction that the American producers or the channel really wanted it to go in. They wanted this asset, this gem, but they didn't really know what it was or how to make it.
How have you found the sort of the transition from, like you say, the TV world where it's quite formulaic, lots of people doing lots of jobs, and you're a pawn in the game of chess, really. YouTube is not like that.
No, I think the interesting thing is it's like any entrepreneurial business, I guess. You have the delusion of freedom, you have the delusion of your own destiny you're in control of, but you're really not, I guess. And that's been one of the many interesting things about YouTube or playing in that world, is that trying to be a YouTuber is obviously, the analogy we keep coming up with is we're providing a sort of a 5-course meal for a tapas bar, which is hard in itself. So so the show we're making is what YouTube would like to aspire to, because they just want people to watch stuff for longer. But their algorithm doesn't really work that way. It doesn't really favour this kind of TV. So that's the thing. But also, I felt we had an obligation to make a show that looked like the kind of stuff that everybody's been watching for all these years. And so we do everything in 4K. We change the lenses. We actually try and get the shots so you can actually see the thing that we're struggling to find and whatever. But what's really interesting with the YouTube thing is just the way that the stories in the workshop write themselves. I mean, with the Rally Mini, it was going to be just 2 jobs done, and it still hasn't been finished. The Range Rover, just the amount of jobs we had to do just to get it out of the door was ridiculous, and we know it was going to be bad.
Yeah.
And I didn't even intend to do that project. It was just a mate had this Range Rover, he was talking about it, so that'd be quite fun, and we're doing some stuff about Super Classics. Let's give it a go. And so now it's become its own beast, and that seems to be the most popular car we're doing. The electric ice cream van project was something I did ages ago, and people wanted to see what happened, and so we've kind of used footage we had at the time and blended it with stuff we're doing now. So it's the freedom, I think, that is the really interesting thing about YouTube. I think all the old dinosaur TV channels are terrified by digital because they don't get it, they don't understand how to make it work.
Yeah.
And the thing about YouTube is that we have Imogen, Mrs. C, does all the subtitling and stuff, so she has to transcribe my rubbish each week. It takes probably about a day, and then we do it in sort of 50 odd languages of translations and stuff, because there's people around the world. Before we had, Wheeler Dealers had like 300 million viewers
wow.
in 200 and something territories around the world, so we know the audience is out there, so we kind of want to make sure that they get it. And then we did one show in Klingon. Haven't had many viewers, but we never could have done that before.
No.
So I think it's that fact that it's the immediacy, and then the fact that you guys get to comment on what we're doing. You can ask questions, you can tell me what I've done wrong, all that kind of stuff. Literally the second the video's gone up, and that's really good fun and sort of exciting and depressing all in one go.
Is there a day that goes by when you don't get a DM, an email, or somebody actually tapping you on the shoulder and asking you why you left Wheeler Dealers.
No, I think most
Or
people
whether you
have
tried to murder Mike tried to murder you.
It's like
Ant
it's
Hanstead tried
such
to
old
murder
news.
you.
Yeah, no. The thing is, it's such. I mean, it's one of those things. It's like it is funny. You get little pockets, of course, and there's a lot of troll stuff, and that's the bad thing about, I guess, the World Wide Web is, you know, people get opinions or can voice opinions without the, I guess, the usual or the original social limitations of either embarrassment or you know, getting pummeled to death by, you know, an angry mob or whatever it might be, and I think that's not cool. That sort of anonymity kind of it fuels people in the wrong mind, if you like, you know, and to do things that are nasty and mean and cruel and everything else. But also, it's like, you know, there's so much stuff out there. Let's just move on. Do you know what I mean? So I've done so much stuff since I left. You know, it's crazy. You know, or even like this year, we've done 26 episodes so far. 24. I don't know. I've lost count already of Workshop Diaries in however many months, and that's more episodes than we ever did in a year of Wheeler Dealers.
Yeah.
And that's possible because of all kinds of stuff, and so it's just really exciting to be involved in that and working out how that goes. And so, you know, sort of like, who has time for politics and pettiness and
That's
whatever.
true. What would it take for you to be on Wheeler Dealers again?
It's just no point. Workshop Diaries is so much better, isn't it? There we go. 4 or 5 people loving that. Thank you.
Would the world of TV, the big wigs of television, if they I mean, presumably you've had a few calls from a few people to say, would you do a bit of this? Would you do
I think, well, we had a lot of, I mean, I think TV is quite weird at the moment because there's, it's like, you know, we're making the same quality, or better quality TV actually for YouTube than we would have had on a broadcast channel. And the thing is, broadcast TV is so caught up in whatever random politics has come out of whatever cheese and wine party that afternoon. It kind of, they're just lost. And I think there's some great TV every once in a while, and there's some amazing dramas and stuff, and that's because that creative process perhaps is more nurtured and maybe more traditional. I think reality TV, you know, often has lost its way, and then you get madness like Gogglebox, which is just genius. And then I mean, imagine the pitch for that. You know, what we're going to do this TV show where the audience, it's like, makes no sense, but it's really entertaining because it's about people and it's about characters, and I think that's. You know, it's sort of just like drama used to be, just like sitting around the bonfire when we were cavemen. It's about, you know, I guess, being a group and celebrating that. And I think that's the stuff that really, you know, we should be using the internet for good. We should be using TV for that. We should be spreading knowledge. We should be spreading understanding and whatever. And I think it's much easier, frankly, to do that when there's no agendas, or the agenda's ours, I guess.
Did you ever buy a Wheeler Dealer car?
I did.
Did you want to, or did
I bought the Lamborghini Urraco because that was epic. So I had to get my agents to buy it because we weren't at the time allowed to do it. It's like, why would you not be allowed to buy a car off the show? Whatever. So we had to pay strong money for it as well after I'd done all the work and whatever else. And it's like, that doesn't seem right. But it was such an amazing car. I mean, driving. It was on my birthday. We were doing the test drive in the Dolomite Mountains. You know, you got Burt Bacharach. You know, sort of days like these in your head. Sort of just driving up with this flat plane V8 making an amazing noise. You know, it was just one of those cars. It's like, I've just got to have that. But then we had to go to America, so I had to sell it because you couldn't have it fizzing away in the garage at home. So we did, and I did stupidly buy the Lexus. So I bought the van off the show, and then the cameraman, desperate to have it, you know, the camper van thing. So we ended up selling it to him, and then the guy who bought the Lexus off the show didn't want it anymore. So I thought, well, I'll have that. And it's a proper pimp wagon, an LS400. It's amazing. It did like 140 miles an hour, and he wouldn't even notice.
Yeah.
But the missus wasn't entirely keen on that. So yes, that had to go. And so I swapped it for a Jet Provost cab, canopy, which also had to go.
So a lot of things having to go. So what have you got right now, like vehicle-wise? Could you quickly list such
Well, we've got a lot of the weirdness. The sofa's stuck in California. We have the orange here. We've got two. I've got 1918 and 1916 Cadillac that I bought off the show, so I bought that off mic because we had to buy that ourselves. We were going to do the Peking to Paris. So one day we might. I've got to finish those cars, and then all the weird stuff, the giant shopping trolley and stuff. But that's basically it, and a lot of Range Rovers that don't work.
So, from here, where do you want to go? What do you want to do?
I think I might go home first, and then I don't know. I think the thing is, Workshop Diaries is interesting. So it's as a start, because it is a start-up business. It's partner funded, so we need sort of partners, we need sort of sponsors effectively to make it work. Like most YouTube stuff on the planet, frankly. So there's that. It's kind of writing itself. The audience are very much shaping where it might head. It is insanely hard work, so it'd be good to work that out. It has to make that slightly easier. But then, of course, a weekly show is always going to be insanely hard work.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see how that goes and for how long it goes, I think. And then I think it would just be nice. And I've got lots of ideas for other madness, but I think, also, as you get older, you've got to sort of get rid of something. I mean, years and years ago, when I was doing the comfy stuff, I had lists miles long of all these mad cars.
I'd love
I could make.
to see your notebooks.
And it was crazy, and we had one of the mini cars was going to be like a giant driving glitter ball, so not too dissimilar to that, but it actually spin as it drives along, and it would let you out all this mad stuff, and like flying saucers that drove a desert island with its own island trailer. There was all kinds of stuff I was going to make, and then they kind of stopped for it. I thought, well, if it takes me even just 6 months to build it, very professional. Even if it just takes me 6 months to build each one of these vehicles, I realised I was going to be dead before I'd even got probably a third of the way through the list, if I was being optimistic. And you kind of go, okay, some of these are going to have to get cut. So the driving caravan that was going to go, and I didn't bother with that. And so after a while you start to be a bit careful. So I don't know yet I still want to do the airship.
Give us your top 5 of weird vehicles that you think you have to build before you die.
Well, I'm definitely going to do an amphibian of some kind. I mean, we should do an amphibious sofa, obviously, but because who doesn't need one of those? But I think we'll do one of those. I think I quite like the idea of doing something a bit more practical. Because the thing about an amphibian is that it's really awesome when you can go from land to water, water to land. So if you're stuck in traffic and can kind of peel off and go, but you're not necessarily going to be in that car unless it's useful and practical. So that needs to be dealt with. I think it seems like the flying car thing is definitely happening. I mean, it'd be kind of nice to make. I don't know, I guess it'd be
I think that's a terrifying idea.
It is a terrifying idea, especially if it's all going to be controlled by AI, because we know that doesn't work.
Imagine flying Mustangs leaving a Cars and Coffee event. Seriously, just think about it.
Or even just what is a burnout going to look like in a flying car?
All right, well, listen, thanks ever so much for getting a little. The thing is, there's so much to talk about with you. There's so many little stories and other parts of the story that you can go off and explore. We haven't got enough time to do it all, so.
And we've got to wake up all these people. I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah, but I just wanted to say thanks ever so much for coming along to the show, and thanks for sparing some time, and well done for starting the YouTube channel, because I know from small amount of experience that it's harder than it seems. But no, good on you.
Well, thank you, and good luck with the more tours. It's a fantastic idea.
Well, we'd like to have you along again. Bring the orange, obviously.
You might even be able to drive it one day. It'd be great.
You should do. I love the orange. I remember them as a kid, and you can get models of them. Could you get a Matchbox model?
Yeah, well, yes. I don't know if you still can get them. We've got a couple.
Yeah. So, yeah, thank you very much, Ed.
Thank you.
And thanks to Richard. My colleague, Richard Porter. Yeah. Thank you. I've probably got to say things like, thanks for watching this episode of The Late Break Show. You can subscribe because it's possible. You just press a button and there's a bell icon.
And you know that YouTube likes that, so do that just so you can tell YouTube that Jonny's show is awesome.
Yeah, press the bell, please. Comment if you'd like to comment. And obviously, if you haven't watched any of the other Idle Chats, I'll put those as a link to the playlist for those. Thank you.